Long before the name Nicholas Winton would be whispered with reverence, long before the medals and monuments, the ceremonies and documentaries, before the world discovered the quiet heroism of a man who never sought the spotlight, he was simply a young stockbroker living a quiet life in London, concerned more with markets and investments than with the unraveling tragedy unfolding across Europe. But history has a strange way of finding its guardians, and in the closing days of 1938, as Nazi terror cast its long and merciless shadow over Czechoslovakia, fate knocked on Winton's door in the form of a phone call from a friend, Martin Blake, who had gone to Prague to help Jewish refugees and saw the desperation firsthand. Nicholas, scheduled for a ski holiday in Switzerland, cancelled his plans and traveled instead to Czechoslovakia, a journey that would not only alter his own destiny, but change the lives of hundreds and echo across generations not yet born. What he witnessed in Prague was soul-shattering. Tens of thousands of Jews, especially children, forced into exile from the Sudetenland following Hitler's annexation, now stranded in makeshift refugee camps, shivering in the snow, hungry, hopeless, with the Western powers unwilling to intervene and no safe haven to turn to. These were families living on borrowed time, mothers and fathers whose eyes silently begged for someone, anyone, to save their children from what they sensed was coming. A future of trains that did not stop in safe cities, but in Auschwitz and Treblinka. Nicholas Winton, who had no authority, no military backing, no training in humanitarian work, chose to act when most remained paralyzed by fear or indifference. From his hotel room, armed with a typewriter, determination, and a boundless sense of moral urgency, he began compiling lists of Jewish children whose parents were willing, out of love and desperation, to send them away to strangers in foreign countries, in the faint hope they might live. What started as a single man scribbling names on paper quickly evolved into a rescue mission that would defy the very systems that were locking their doors to refugees. When Winton returned to Britain, the real battle began. Not with guns, but with bureaucracy. He fought for permissions, pleaded with government officials, campaigned to have Britain accept unaccompanied children, secured guarantees from foster families willing to care for them, raised the required £50 per child for travel and resettlement expenses, a massive sum at the time, and wrote thousands of letters to embassies, sponsors, philanthropists, and anyone who might listen. He battled red tape with unrelenting energy, often forging paperwork or bending rules when time was running out and lives hung in the balance. He printed photographs of each child, placed them in binders, and took them door to door to find families who would take them in. Not next week, not next month, but immediately. The British government reluctantly agreed to allow refugee children entry as long as they had a guardian and funds for support. That was enough. With no official help and only a small network of volunteers, including his mother Barbara, who became his most tireless partner, Nicholas Winton created what history would later call the Czech Kindertransport. The first train left Prague in March of 1939. On board were dozens of children, carrying small bags, clutching toys or letters from their parents, eyes wide with fear and confusion. Their parents, left behind on the platform, waved goodbye through tears, knowing they may never see their children again. And they were right. Most never would. Winton continued the effort for months, arranging for 8 trains in total, transporting 669 children from Czechoslovakia to London, each one a miracle of timing, effort, and resistance against the tide of death sweeping the continent. He worked every day, writing, persuading, organizing, often staying up into the early hours of the morning. He placed no conditions on religion or background. All that mattered was saving lives. The children were received by foster families, Jewish, Christian, poor, rich, anyone who had a heart and a home. The final train, scheduled for September 1st, 1939, was to be the largest yet, carrying over 250 children. But that very morning, Germany invaded Poland. Borders were sealed. War was declared. The train never left. The children on that list vanished into the darkness of history, likely among the first to perish in the ghettos and camps. Winton was devastated, but he did not stop. He tried to continue arranging rescue efforts, but the war made everything impossible. And then he moved on, not because he forgot, but because he believed he had only done what anyone ought to have done. He packed the letters, lists, visas, photos, and documents into a single leather-bound scrapbook, placed it in his attic, and told no one, not his wife, not his children, not his closest friends. For nearly 50 years, the world knew nothing of what Nicholas Winton had done. He never spoke of it. He never asked for thanks. He never thought of himself as a hero. His life resumed as if those months of extraordinary bravery had been just another chapter, folded neatly away into memory. It wasn't until 1988, when his wife Greta discovered the dusty scrapbook in the attic of their home, that the secret began to unravel. Inside were passenger lists, photographs of children, letters from parents, documents detailing the rescues, an entire world of silent heroism hidden between pages. She showed it to a historian, and soon the BBC learned of the story. They invited Nicholas Winton to appear on the television program That's Life. What he didn't know was that seated in the studio audience were many of the children, now grown adults, whom he had saved. During the show, the host asked if anyone in the audience owed their life to Nicholas Winton to stand. One woman rose, then another, and soon nearly the entire audience was on their feet, tears in their eyes, looking at the man who had saved them from the Holocaust. Nicholas sat in stunned silence, eyes wide, overcome by emotion. It was one of the most powerful moments ever broadcast. The world wept for the children, for the parents left behind, and for the quiet man who saved lives and kept it hidden, not for glory, but because his conscience told him it was right. After the broadcast, honors began to pour in. Nicholas Winton was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II in 2003. He received the highest honors from the Czech Republic and Slovakia. Statues were erected at train stations in Prague and London, showing him with a child, a suitcase, a world saved. A minor planet was named after him. He met many of the now elderly children he had saved, who called him our father. But through it all, he remained deeply humble. "I wasn't heroic," he insisted. "I just saw something that needed to be done, and I did it." When asked how he could organize the rescue of 669 children without ever speaking of it, he would simply smile and change the subject. His humility was not performative. It was real. He believed the true test of morality was how one acts when no one is watching. When he turned 100, dozens of the people he had rescued joined him for a celebration, bringing with them their children and grandchildren, entire generations that existed because of his courage. At 105, he met the Queen again. At 106, on July 1st, 2015, the anniversary of the largest transport he had organized, he passed away peacefully in his sleep. The news of his death made headlines around the world. Presidents, prime ministers, religious leaders, and survivors paid tribute. But perhaps the greatest tribute was in the numbers. Over 6,000 people alive today, directly descended from the children he rescued. Children who became teachers, doctors, scientists, artists, mothers, and fathers. People who lived full lives, created memories, built futures, and shaped the world. Because one man, in the face of overwhelming darkness, refused to look away. And so today, we remember not only the 669 children who found light through the shadow of death, but the one man who carried that light without ever asking to be seen. Nicholas Winton wasn't a soldier. He didn't fight with weapons. He didn't lead nations or armies. But he may have done more for humanity than any general ever could. He proved that one individual, guided by empathy, courage, and conviction, can defy the tide of history, not with noise, but with quiet, unshakable resolve. His life is a testament to what is possible when we choose to care, when we choose to act, and when we believe, even against all odds, that goodness still matters. Nicholas Winton did not just save lives, he saved futures. He saved entire worlds. And he did it with humility, with love, and in silence. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel and share it with others. Let the legacy of Nicholas Winton live on. And remember, quiet courage can echo louder than any shout.